Don't cry cause it ain't gon' rain every day. Don't despair cause it ain't your way. Keep it real, make the best out of any situation that you come across. Some lose, some lost, I'ma shake it off and get back to what I'm really about. Give the crowd something to feel. Tell me why you scream.
You are listening to the JoNessa podcast.
Conversations from the couch.
Fresh off of Thanksgiving break. We ate good. We were great hosts. Had a good time.
Yeah. The macaroni and cheese was popping. The turkey was popping. Dressing, if you eat that, was popping. Greens were popping.
Everything was good. Everyone.
Icebox cake popping. Pie.
Icebox pie. Shout out to my sister-in-law.
Made it especially for you.
Nikki Kilpatrick.
Huh? That is not her name.
I mean, I'm sorry. You know, it's hard because when I met her, her last name was Kilpatrick. She's been married for a while. No disrespect to my brother-in-law, Craig. Renika Craig.
You put her, what if she don't want you to put her whole name out there?
Listen,
like
she's a businesswoman.
Hey, y'all, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see us. But if you're listening via our podcast platforms, you can't see this, but you all, I put on my sorority sweatshirt because I was like, you know what? Oh, I'm gonna feel warm and comfy and cozy, have those vibes going on. I walked downstairs, and who has put on their fraternity sweatshirt?
I had this
Joseph.
out last night.
I didn't know that.
For tonight's
I didn't see it.
Episode that we were supposed to record last night.
But baby, I didn't see it.
Well, you know that I wear hoodies all the time for our podcast.
But what is the likelihood, y'all? So long story short, he trying to match me. He trying to have a ski-yo moment for the podcast today. Shout out to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
If you're a part of the fraternity I'm representing or the sorority my wife is representing, make sure that you hit that like button right now. Subscribe, share, watch our old episodes. But that's neither here nor there. Great Thanksgiving. The families always come prepared to eat.
Yeah, it was so good having all of our family back under one roof because here in 2020 Thanksgiving, we were not able to celebrate with both sides of our family. And it is such a beautiful thing when both of our sides of the family can come together and just be able to eat and drink and be merry and play games. It was wonderful.
Yes,
it really made my
was.
heart so happy to be able to do that this year.
Yes, it did. I missed it.
How'd you feel about it?
Same thing. I missed it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Was looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. Ate my fair share of the portions and then some. So
you didn't have to tell the couch because it's your business. We didn't even have to go there.
You know, I enjoyed my Thanksgiving break. Ate what I wanted to eat, but now it's back to business.
Ate my popcorn. You know,
ate some of your snacks, but it's back to business.
Yeah,
and back to business for us means, of course, this podcast, but back to business for work. Mm-hmm. And I say this all the time. You talk about your occupation. They know what you do. I discuss my occupation some, but
that's you. That's your personality.
Yeah, that's my personality. We work with people.
Yes.
And
we serve. I would say we serve.
We serve people.
We serve people.
We're both in positions of leadership, and we serve people. And the situations and the circumstances that the people we serve face are very real.
Yeah, they are.
And I can say, well, in my opinion, it doesn't seem like right now, at this current place and time, in this current moment in history, things are really not getting better. It seems like it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because sometimes you feel like you're on an island as far as you're like the only person, or the people that are in the field with you are the only people that care about what the people we serve are going through and what we go through serving those people. But I think it speaks to something to a larger degree that we all deal with in life. So I thought it would be kind of cool to discuss this. And for some reason, the Tupac song, Brenda's Got a Baby, just popped up in my mind when I was thinking about this episode, because the line in the song is, Brenda's got a baby. And the reply is, that's not our problem. That's up to Brenda's family. And I thought about it. I'm like, golly.
That statement.
That statement.
Ugh.
And I feel like I'll speak for myself,
Okay.
that the public feels that way about the individuals I serve. Do you feel that way?
To some degree. Yeah, I would have to say that. And if you're not there in the trenches seeing it from day to day, I think it's easier for you to be like, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
Let them handle it, over in those professions type situation. I agree with you.
Exactly. And I'm a psychology major, so I did a deep dive into it. So we'll start off deep and kind of get into the specifics of it. But there's something, a phenomenon that's called normalcy bias.
Okay.
And what that basically is believing that things will continue to occur in the future the way they have typically occurred in the past and continue to be normal.
Okay.
This leads us to underestimate both the likelihood of a disaster occurring, which a disaster will likely occur, and how bad the disaster is when it does occur.
Okay.
So, going back to the original statement with Tupac in that line, is that's not our problem. You're just thinking that's just normal everyday life, but you're failing to neglect that eventually it's going to become your problem.
Indeed.
And it's going to be a very big problem when it does reach your feet and when it does knock at your doorstep. So, I mean, in your everyday life, and I'll go first.
Okay.
We'll start with the micro and go to the macro.
Macro. Okay.
Because it's something we all deal with. How do you overcome normalcy bias and not becoming very cynical or out of touch? For me, I'll just personally disclose with my recent health news, I was diagnosed with high cholesterol. I was very surprised. I was very surprised. But why are you looking at me like that?
Okay, just keep going, baby. Keep going. We listening.
Because I mean, even though I just went on an epic Thanksgiving binge, but I'm relatively trying to stay in good health and health conscious. But I do have a family history of it. It would be foolish of me to just ignore it and think that things will level out and return to normalcy if I continue to do the things I've done in the past. If I do that, the likelihood of disaster occurring will be very real, and how bad the disaster would be epic if I didn't just stop and take it seriously.
Yeah.
Even though right now it's not as egregious as it potentially will be.
Could be.
Or could be 10, 20 years from now. So, I mean, I could just continue to have that normalcy bias and just continue, it is what it is. I know who I am. I'll work out. I'll exercise. It'll be fine. But eventually you're going to have to deal with it. Even though it seems like it's not even in the realm of possibility right now. So, personally speaking, with my high cholesterol, I'm not going to fall into that normalcy mindset and ignore it. I know there's something real that not only is going to affect me, but can affect you.
Oh, you stole it out my mouth.
And can affect Jackson and our future kids.
Why did you stole it?
Sorry. Okay.
I was going to add my 2 cents and go back to the line from the Tupac Shakur song where it talks about, Brenda has a baby, that's her family's problem. And so with your high cholesterol that you've been diagnosed with, like, that's not just Joe's problem. I also have to make sure that when I'm going to the grocery store, I'm buying foods that are conducive to not making your cholesterol even higher. Have to make sure that we're communicating about that, because it can affect myself, and like you said, it can affect Jackson. You had a good example when we were talking about your cholesterol, and you were saying it would be crazy of me to continue to like eat like high cholesterol foods, and then like when I'm 50 years old, like when you were saying you were like sitting on the doctor table, and what'd you say, like if the doctor was like,
it'd be mad at the doctor,
like, man, what's going on, how you gonna tell me all of this? But you're so right, like you need to realize that something is going on. Now I'm gonna have to do something to like fix it, change it, because it can affect not just myself but others. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. Are there some like normalcy biases that you have to fight off in your personal life?
I would definitely have to say like the part of like mental health. Knowing my family history of like things going on, like mental health, like with my grandmother and things like that, for me to just sit here and say, oh, I'm just going through, like, I'm just in a mood, I'm having bad vibes, like, no, it's a little bit deeper than just bad vibes. It's a little bit more than just having a bad day. Probably need to, go talk to the therapist, see what's going on. At first, I thought going to the therapist, and this was so cliche, like, I am not going, and that's for those types of people. Oh, no, that's really not true. So it was important for me, if I didn't want to continue to affect Joseph and Jackson and my family, people around me that I come in contact with, that I work with, that I was going to have to do something in order to fix myself, so it doesn't have a negative impact on other people. Because the way that if your mental health is not where it should be, if it's not in a healthy state, then it really can affect those around you just as much as it's affecting you. Like if you just come in and you just like your vibe is off, your energy is off, and you're just in a bad mood, and you're disregarding people's feelings, and you're disregarding other people, that can really affect them. And then they're like, oh, like, what did I do? What's going on with me? So it's very important to realize that it's my problem, and it can also affect other people. And I think you do a good job of like supporting, like, okay, it's our issue that we're going to face together by sitting down, us having conversations, us talking about it. You're encouraging me to go like to therapy and things of that nature. So yeah, that's my micro viewpoint.
So it's easy for people, because I know our audience members that are listening and watching, it's easy to be cognizant and conscious of those things that are going on in your personal life. And it's also easy to forget about it too, going back to what our 2 points, and wait until it's disaster time and it's too late. So that's why it's important for you to be mindful of those things that don't seem as close right now, or in your main vision, and maybe in your peripherals, because you eventually are going to have to deal with it. So going back to that's not our problem, that's up to Brenda's family, and going to our 2 career paths, and even going beyond that, the overdose rate in my career is extremely high. The pandemic has exacerbated those numbers, but we've been in a crisis as far as drug overdoses in this country for a long time. And it was very much in the news, and it kind of died down. But now, even though the rates are even higher than it was at the height of the crisis, the awareness of it and the discussions about it, it's not even being discussed.
It's kind of like fizzled.
It's fizzled out.
Yeah.
And this is a serious problem when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people dying due to drug overdoses. And it may be because I'm in this field and I have the heart for it, but I think this is something that's very serious. And this may sound harsh. I get offended, and I think that it may be it comes across to me as a little selfish for you to not know about this big thing that we are facing in this country, but you know about the new Adele 30 album that came out, or you know about the latest TikTok trend that came out, or you know about whatever's going on with Kanye or Kim, or you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah, I get you for sure.
I know that sounds harsh. Am I being harsh? And do you feel the same way about the things that you deal with and the people that you serve in your career?
Well, that was a loaded question. Knowing you personally, you can be very black and white. You have no gray area, no in between. So I do think it's a little bit unfair. I do 100% understand what you're saying, but it's unfair. You'd be like, how do you not know that the overdose rate for, people is like high? Like, I think people to some degree kind of know about it, but just to cancel them and say like, how do you not know that? That's kind of unfair, because they might have a passion in another area that we're not as aware of, or we don't know all of the statistics. So, but I do understand what you're saying. As far as in my career field, I feel that we kind of even touched on it with a podcast when we had Brother Thomas on the show, and it's definitely reaching our young men. I'm just going to say young men in general. Like, I'm not going to put any other categories on it. Young men in the education system right now, I am very nervous, and I do think it's something that people like, oh, we're going to do things to help our boys, but I really don't feel like people are doing it. Like, I know right now because of COVID, like, volunteers can't necessarily come into the schools, but like, what's going on outside of school? Like, what are people trying to do to help our boys really get attached to something other than the typical like sports? Like, what are we really trying to do? And so I feel like that is a huge problem, and the statistics will show it, and we'll talk about the gap that's in between like our males, but what are we really doing? Because we're still using the same curriculum, just putting a different spin on it. So yes, I do feel like people don't fully understand how we really need to start saving our male population in the schools.
And you have to understand that when young males are not in school or doing things that are productive, they're going to turn to violence, they're going to turn to crime, or they're going to become I don't want to say a problem, an issue that's going to affect my field, where they're going to turn to drugs and alcohol. And that affects the entire community.
It does.
So even though...
And then we want to shake the finger. We want shake the finger, but what did we do? What do we do to help these young men?
Well, it starts with getting out of your own bubble.
That's true.
And I get it. Listen, there's so many distractions.
We're talking to ourselves as well. I'm talking to myself as well. I'll say that, couch cousin.
And I will say this, and I wrote this down, and I'm gonna read it off because it's very. I'm gonna give some grace. It becomes very
it's necessary.
Yes. It becomes very easy to think that our surroundings and what we are experiencing is what the world and everyone else is experiencing, understanding, or viewing.
Now come on.
Let me repeat that.
You said it. Say it to him again. Say it again.
It becomes very easy to think that our surroundings and what we are experiencing is what the world and everyone else is experiencing, understanding, or viewing.
And at the same time, that steps on our toes.
It steps on our toes. It really does.
Yeah.
Because I thought about this on one of the episodes when we were talking about fatherhood. And I remember saying, and I had to go back and think about it because, I said, when I look around, we're talking about the absent black father.
Yes.
And I said, well, when I look around and I see my friends and we're all in our child's life, so I'm not really giving too much credence. Well, I'm going off of what
you're surrounded by.
What I'm surrounded by.
Yes.
And I completely dismiss what thousands of other mothers go through what their children are going through when their fathers are not there. And that's real.
I like that reflective moment, Joe. Like, I like that you thought about it, you put it into action of something that you said to really illustrate that quote. I'm gonna call it your quote that you have. Your quote that you just said. I find that to be rich, and I think that we all need to kind of reflect on our surroundings, because I'm getting on this tangent about saving our boys, but that's what I'm surrounded by right now.
Yeah.
There's other people that need to be saved.
That's true.
There's other people that need to be saved.
Yeah.
So, that was loaded.
Yes.
That's loaded.
But our boys, it's a big problem. There are other people that need to be saved, but
our young men,
and there's so much studies and research, and people are talking about it now because you project things out when you're in a society, when you're in a culture like we are in. You have to project things out so you know how to plan for the future.
Yeah.
So when you do the projections, you're realizing that 20 years from now, we're going to have a big problem, because we're going to have a lot of young men who are just they'll be men by then displaced.
Yeah.
And what do you do with them? Because jobs that are being phased out, they're not coming back, and they're not going to school, so they're not preparing for the jobs of the future. So what do you do with these young men?
Yeah.
And adding to the overdose rate, which is a high likelihood, is not helping anyone. And eventually, you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I get the distractions, and we're busy with 9 to 5s. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, and I'm going to do a better job.
No, you're good.
But when you brought up distractions, I think we were talking about this as well. Sometimes your occupation or what you do on in your everyday life sometimes can be so heavy. Mm-hmm. The last thing you want to do is to think about something else that's heavy. Yeah. And I'm going to speak for myself. I think that's important. I like how you say I'm saying for myself. I'm going to say for myself, sometimes I just want to get on Instagram and scroll like mindlessly and not have to think about real serious issues. And so those distractions become a way for me to be able to cope. Like, what little TikTok challenge I got? What's Kim Ye doing now? Like, so how do you find a balance? Like, what do you do, Joe? Because I think to some degree a distraction is sometimes necessary for you to be able to wake up the next morning and get back in that trench and keep digging and keep going with what's been laid on your heart to do in the world.
No, listen, I get it.
Okay.
I get all of that. I would be very disingenuous and lying if I acted as if I was always in full serious mode. Listen, I'm a wrestling nerd. I'm a sports nerd. I'm a nerd in so many different categories. I understand all that. However, I do make a conscious effort to be aware of what's going on in the world, because I don't ever want to become out of touch. Mm-hmm. I don't ever want to lack empathy for what others are going through, and I don't want to be naive about what's going on.
Yeah.
And when you allow distractions, even when they're really much needed distractions, you become at risk of falling into those three things. And going back to where we started off with, eventually it's going to affect you
100%,
because the time that you're using to distract yourself or take your mind off of what
Couch
you're going through.
Y'all come get me. He coming for me, Couch Cousin. No, I'm just kidding. Keep going, babe. Keep going.
You have to understand that during that time when you're being distracted and giving yourself a break, unfortunately, there are others and other forces that are taking advantage of that time and adding to that problem and that situation that you're going to have to deal with. So I think that it's responsible.
Ooh.
I know that's a heavy word.
That's a heavy word. It's loaded.
For you to be aware of what's going on around you. Serious issues that are taking place in this world. I think it's very irresponsible for you to not make an attempt to be aware. Is that too heavy?
I don't think that's too heavy. I think that's fair. And I think that's something personally I need to work on. Couch Cousins, you might need to think about working on it. And I like that you keep bringing up the word aware, because when you become aware of things, you're more cognizant of what's going on. And so you're less likely to become naive and relatable. And I like it how when you keep saying like just being aware, because that way when issues do arise and when maybe the disaster it occurs, you're not just so blindsided.
Yes.
Like you're like, you know what? We kind of saw this coming with the dropout rate of males in high school. We saw this coming with how the suicide rate just kept increasing and it did not decrease. So it is, I do agree with you, Joe. It is important to be aware, but you know what that's going to take. And I'm talking to myself, going outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable to be in the world of education. For myself, it's comfortable for you to be in the world of thinking in the mind and psychology and therapy. That's comfortable for you. It takes a lot more effort to go outside and be aware of things that we're not directly dealing with, and at the moment is not directly impacting us. So you have to be like, okay, let me go outside of my comfort zone. Let me go outside of maybe the people that I'm usually around and get more viewpoints and get different viewpoints of what's going on in the world around me. I'm listening to different types of news outlets. I know we've had conversations about that and really informing ourselves so that we understand what's going on. I agree. Being aware, because when you're not aware, like even you're going to disagree with me, but I'm okay with it. But even being aware of things that are going on with like teenagers, like you do need to be aware, like all these little TikTok dances, like you got to be aware of what they mean and what's going on. Like it is important, because if not, you're going to look naive and the kids are going to be doing things in front of your face and you're not going to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that word, aware. I like how you keep bringing that up.
And I like what you said about making sure that you are informed and informing yourself, because what happens a lot of times, because we are so busy and we're so distracted, when that moment comes, what do? We rely on others, whether it's an authority figure or a person you may trust, to make that decision for you.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I mean, we're human beings. We can be selfish. The decision I make for you, I'm going to make sure that it benefits me and my thought process and how it's going to help me in the long run. And unfortunately, especially during these times, with the moments that we're living in, that's happening a lot more.
Yeah. And
it's strategic because we are so distracted with work. And listen, I will say this. I know it's hard. You only have but moments. I don't even like saying hours or minutes. You have a few moments, a lot of us, especially if you work in certain fields where you have 12-hour work shifts. And heck, you have 12 hours. Your field ain't even call for 12-hour work shifts.
Keep on with what you're saying, honey. I was behind you. See, look at the couch.
You gotta have time to rest and sleep. You have to have
spend time with your family.
Spend time with your family. I get it. Listen, I was having this conversation with one of my colleagues, and I was telling him, like, man, to be a healthy, responsible, normal adult, it's very hard
It's hard work.
It's hard work.
Because you have to put some effort into it.
You have to put a lot of effort.
Yeah, you're right, a lot of effort.
Yes, and depending on your circumstances, some more than others. I had to put, unfortunately, because of my genetics and the way my body is set up, I have to exercise and work out. I have to be conscious of that, because if I don't, shoot, I would have had high cholesterol 10 years ago. Like, seriously. So that's just one example. I mean, people have other examples. We only have one child. If you have 5 children, 5 kids.
5 children. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I mean, so listen, I get it.
Yeah.
When you do have that moment, of course, you don't want to spend it on what's going on in my community. What can I do to help? I get it. But
intentional. If you're intentional about it, Joe, give it 5 minutes. Give it 5 minutes. What's going on in my community? What's going on maybe in some other communities? 5 minutes.
Yes.
5 minutes.
Yes.
You can get a lot done. You can get a ton done in 5 minutes.
You can get a lot done. Because it was funny. We were talking about what was that, the saying our parents used to say to us?
Oh, you need to.
I hope you know your
lesson. Like you know the words, the lyrics to those songs. Yeah. It's kind of true.
It's very true.
Because you know those lyrics. Like we can still recall lyrics from songs when we were 5 years old to this day right now.
Yes.
But if you ask me certain things that's going on, I'm like, I am not sure. I do not know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to, have priorities.
Yes.
Prioritize.
Because that same logic that our mothers and our grandmamas and our aunties, that same thing needs to apply to adults too.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, it may not be your issue or problem, but eventually, if you continue to ignore it, it is going to affect you. It may hopefully it won't affect you directly, but it may affect a family member or a close friend, and you're going to want to know, how can you help? What can I say? What should I do when that moment comes? And just collectively as a community, we need to be aware of what's going on, because there's certain things that are transpiring it's going to affect you. Yeah. And just preparing for your future as well.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, I agree. Because we want to have a successful future, however your success looks for you. And if you are thrown all of these curveballs that you could have been more informed about, you would have kind of known how to dodge them a little bit better.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. And before we wrap up, just to self-disclose, it was crazy. I was doing a lot of research and just watching yesterday, and just like, hypothetically speaking, this is pure hypotheticals. If we were about to purchase a vehicle, based off the information I received, and I'm glad I'm aware of it, it would not be very wise to purchase a vehicle that solely relies on gas. Yes.
You all not aware? Hey, listen, not aware, didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. Because they are going to be obsolete in about 10 years, and unfortunately the gas prices aren't going to go down.
They're going to rise.
They're going to continuously rise.
Supply and demand.
Because they're trying to push people towards electric vehicles or environmentally friendly vehicles. So just having that awareness has helped our family escape a potential landmine.
And you know, it's gonna change how we make decisions in our future.
Exactly.
So we are not throwing this big old curveball like, we finished all of our payments, or we paid it up, whatever.
Yeah.
Paid this full in cash, and now we're kind of stuck.
Yep.
Well, hey, thank you for investing in the JoNessa situation.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. So, I mean, that's why...
You all might know that, but sorry, I didn't.
But if you don't know, that's just another example of why it's so important to step out of your bubble and don't live so much in an echo chamber. And I know social media, it's just one huge echo chamber, and it's designed that way through the algorithms and confirmation biases. All those things are real things that can easily keep you in a reality that's not really real. Mm-hmm. Going back to what I said about, hey, all my homeboys are taking care of their kids, so therefore all young black men are taking care of their kids. That's not true. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. Yeah.
And we didn't necessarily go there, but I kind of want to tack this on to go along with what you were saying. So, we started the podcast and we were talking about how Thanksgiving, we had it was wonderful, it was great. Well, we had one of my former babies show up with his family to Thanksgiving. Okay, you all, I'm sure y'all like, what? They literal showed up. We love them, but they showed up, and he is facing something that I don't fully understand, but he has made me aware of this situation. And so now we are trying to support and help him, his mom, his girlfriend at this point, to see like, okay, how can we help to make the situation better for you? Like, you all pretty much, how can we get you out of high school? That's not something that I can necessarily comprehend, because that wasn't a struggle for me. Like, getting out of high school, that was a no-brainer. But for this young man, you all, it's a struggle. And he can get out of high school, literally, he can graduate in June. He'll be able to graduate in June. But it's such a struggle, and he has so many things that he is facing. He wants to do it, but there are so many roadblocks. And so making sure that we that's not our life.
No,
that's not what we're necessarily involved in at this moment. But having him come in, having his mother come in, talking to us and making us aware of what's going on with that situation, made us more aware of how we really need to be handling our children in general, how we need to be handling them, listening to them, seeing what's going on in their lives, because it is really impacting them. I'm sure a lot of our couch cousins, you probably didn't think twice about graduating high school. It was a no-brainer for you. However, we have people right now to this day, graduation is kind of just like in limbo. That in itself could, like, it brings tears to my eyes, that in itself, knowing that.
I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad you shared that. So, not to make anyone feel bad.
Oh, I know.
Your behaviors and your escapes are no different from ours. We do the same thing. I have a TikTok account,
and he bees on it. But anyway, so look at this. Anyway,
if you're on TikTok, make sure you follow the JoNessa podcast on TikTok. But hey, all we're saying is, when you get a moment to just kind of step out of your comfort zone, step out of your bubble, and just kind of see what's going on and what's taking place in the world, so that you are aware. And so when you are faced with it, whatever it may be, you won't be caught off guard.
And you can be a part of the solution than rather making the problem larger.
Wow. Perfect way to end it. Listen, this has been another great monumental episode of the JoNessa podcast.
Conversations from the couch.
Please make sure that you follow us on all of our social media platforms. Instagram at
the JoNessa podcast.
Facebook, like our Facebook page, which is
the JoNessa podcast.
Follow us on TikTok at
the JoNessa podcast.
So that's a pattern here. We're very consistent. And subscribe to our YouTube channel
at the JoNessa podcast.
We're easy to find. Thank you. We love you.
We love you. Oh, and hey, I'm so sorry. One more thing. And shouts out to one of our couch cousins. I was at a performance and she was like, "Oh, I love the last episode. That was so heartfelt and so warming." And so thank you so much for saying that, couch cousin. You know who you are. Thank you for that.
Yes. Oh, and thank you again, Amanda Flood. Great episode. Classic episode.
Yes.
Go back and watch that episode and listen to the episode. Classic episode. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.